I'm pleased to welcome back the founder of Peršić Komunikacije, Vedran Peršić, who joins us now as moderator for this final panel of the day at Teodo. Together with our panelists, he'll guide a conversation about inclusive leadership, what it takes to lead not only through pressure, but with purpose. Please welcome our speakers, Biljana Braithwaite, founding partner and CEO Sustineri Partners, Martin Leberle, President of the Management Board NLB Bank AD Podgorica, and Vike Skolton, founder and managing partner of BR Insights, behavior risk specialist and leadership advisor. Vedran, the stage is yours.
Good evening all. Welcome to this panel. In time of crisis, whether economical, political, geopolitical, social, leadership is tested. Crisis amplifies existing inequalities, stress tests institutions, and forces rapid decision-making. But it also reveals an opportunity to lead with clarity, empathy, and adaptability. Chinese sign, as I believe you heard this before, unless you speak Chinese, for crisis combines out of two signs. One is danger. Another one previously was interpreted as opportunity, but today we know it means crucial point when something begins to change. So Chinese word or sign for crisis is danger and something that begins to change. So we're talking about danger, but we're also talking about opportunities and something to change for better, I would say. Biljana, you have worked across the rule of law, ESG, and gender equality in complex, often fragile contexts. In your experience, what does it take to lead inclusively when institutions are under pressure?
Thank you. I think you can hear me good. First, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. We're competing with fantastic weather, and it's the end of the day, so thanks for joining. I'd flip it around. I think because we are at risk and we are in danger, we cannot afford but to lead inclusively, because we have evidence that inclusive leadership will deliver a better result on so many accounts, and Cherie was sort of going through them. It might be a luxury that we can afford at good times not to lead inclusively, but if we are in crisis, we need all the brain power in the room that we can muster. So I think I find it amazing that we are talking about inclusive leadership at times like this as a sort of add-on that we don't have time for now. If you want to be competitive in a very dynamic, rapidly changing environment, you need to be able to anticipate the risks, recognize opportunities, mitigate those risks, and the more diverse views you have in your room, be it cabinet, be it boardroom, the more prudent your decisions will be. And I'll give you some examples, from government as well. During COVID, it turned out, on later analysis, that UK government had some real blind spots on domestic violence and gender-based violence because the cabinet turned out not to be diverse enough. So these cracks really become wide open at times of crisis. So I guess I've sort of flipped your question. I think I sort of find it incomprehensible that we are saying that at times of crisis we have no time for diversity. It's such a nice thing, and we'll get onto it when things are good again. It's absolutely the other way around.
Absolutely. I tend to say that you don't buy umbrella when it's raining. you buy it on a beautiful sunny day. So when we talk about all these changes, when do we need to start talking about them and preparing ourselves? We don't have to wait for crisis.
Absolutely. No, I think, and and also, again, in this part of the world, the beauty is that because we have some catching up to do, some solutions have already been tried, tested, demonstrated to work or not work. So, for example, with quotas, we no longer need to debate whether we need quotas, we don't need quotas. I mean, we can like them or not like them. There is evidence that introduction of quotas leads to more rapid change. Change doesn't happen spontaneously. We all wish it would happen spontaneously. I would be the first one to sign up for a world without quota, but if we don't have them, then we're looking at these timelines that we just heard about, 131, 151, and I've got 2 daughters, they'll have sons or daughters, and it won't be even their daughters and their daughters. I mean, it's just incomprehensible, so we've got to do something. And so, for example, this, and with women on boards, this is sort of one of the things that we advocate for. We have evidence from European Union, we're joining anyway, so we'll be asked to align, but why not seize this opportunity and do it today and give corporate sector more time to adjust, as you say, because ultimately, we will have more women who are prepared to say, I'm ready, and we will have more corporates who can say, we've done this not because we were forced to, but because we recognized the business case. So today.
Absolutely. Martin, banks are both stabilizers and enablers during crisis. What role can financial institutions play in promoting inclusion? Not only in lending and access, but within their own organizational culture during economic stress.
First of all, I'm very proud to sit here, and maybe and congratulations and respect together to you and your team for this excellent conference here. So why I'm here? You might hear that I'm German, but I'm for more than 30 years foreigner. I was working in countries like Hungary, Poland, Ukraine, Bosnia-Herzegovina, now in Montenegro. And these are all countries and regions where there is and was stress, crisis. And I was also responsible to turn crisis banks into good banks. So I learned some lessons and got some experience. One lesson I learned, as you said, to buy the umbrella during the sunshine. This is important. So if you start with inclusion in the stress time or in the crisis, this is far too late. As a bank, we have certain advantages because as a bank, we are permanently under stress test. So the central banks, the regulators, they are stressing us all the time. And we are working in a kind of a sandbox where we learn that inclusive teams are performing better. So that gives us the clear direction for this. And you remember in Montenegro some years ago, we had 2 banks which crashed. It was really stressful. There was a risk of a bank run. We had the COVID crisis. You mentioned this, Bojana, which was especially hitting Montenegro when no tourists were coming. Our inclusive teams really performed excellent in this time. There was not a single day when the banks had to be closed. So we really experienced that these teams function much, much, much better. I lost my track. Just give me a second for this. Yeah, I make a point here now.
So the banks.
So this, sorry, very important. So talking about inclusion, it looks like we want to be the good guys. And yes, we want to be the good guys. But inclusion is not only something philanthropic. Conclusion is a business. So we perform better with mixed teams, with inclusion, with diversity. We have proven track record that we are doing better than others. And I think this is, for a banker, a very important argument.
Okay. Thank you very much, Martin. Vika, Martin, in his previous answer, talked about regulators. You worked for regulators. Mm-hmm. And in your experience, can you maybe talk to us about examples of leadership behavior, but which were not that good.
Yes, so indeed, so in the Netherlands there were also two banks that failed in the, let's say, great financial crisis. ABN AMRO was one of them, for example. And on the back of that, the Dutch Central Bank decided to add a behavioral perspective to their supervisory approach. So to say, can we also look at how we do things within, for example, an executive team or management supervisory board, to address those aspects of how we do things here so that we can better prevent that from happening again. So it was part of forward-looking supervision. And maybe nice to tell you a story, since it's end of day. Stories always stick, right? So this was of a management team of a bank where the CEO had a quite harsh communication style. And that meant that we found out that there were people that reported to that management board who were reticent to bring information to the management board, because if they would get it wrong, he would get mad. Or, you know, burn you down in his communication style. He was also seen as to be very smart. So that intelligence was like also a social status aspect. And so this was driving a risk, because this management board couldn't make the best decisions, because not all information was coming to them, not all perspectives of different people in that bank were included in that decision making. And to your point, Martin, indeed, we know that drives unfortunate outcomes, or it has, you know, it drives a risk. So this was not to make a moral point to this CEO, like, oh, you should be more nice to people or kind. It was really to show it drives a risk. And he first said, but I don't get it, because I was raised like that. My professional upbringing was also that this is what you need to be able to take. And if you can't take it, go to another bank. But this is, you know, I need people around me who are able to take it. Because he thought it was a style preference and not so much a risk. But when we were able to show him that data, evidence-based, we could also have a conversation with the rest of the management board who were not intervening. So this was not just about individual behavior. Again, it was about when he was burning somebody down, there were 3 other management board members here who did not do anything, whilst for the collective and for it was driving a risk. And the things that helped...
What were the consequences of that type of behavior?
Yeah, so the consequence was that people below, so the N-1, let's say, under EXCO, were giving us situations where they did not bring crucial information to the management board because of fear of that response. And what helped was, as soon as the management board saw the link between behavior and outcome, even though the intentions of the CEO were great, it was a lovely man also, but he had just had a certain communication style that had this effect. And what helped was, and I love that Mrs. Blair also mentioned this, was intellectual humility, showing more intellectual humility. He had never said before, I also don't know exactly how to get to the answer in this situation. He had never used those words, so he started to do that. And another thing that he did was, you know, we need to find this solution together. So I don't have all the answers, intellectual humility, but also leading more collectively, more explicitly appreciating other perspectives, inclusion in decision-making. It was just adding a couple of sentences, nothing more than that. But that was, I thought, maybe a story that brings this to life a bit more.
Is he still there at this position? Is the bank profitable?
I can't comment.
You can comment?
I hope so, because I also think it's not about changing people. Like, oh, this person does this, then he needs to go, other person comes in. It's more about that we all learn. And every person in a senior leadership role has his strengths and vulnerabilities, and that's normal. So it doesn't need to mean that you have to leave.
We live in a time when 5 generations are actually working together. From baby boomers to Gen Zs, they all work in one company, one organization. And it's very hard to navigate through these generations and the styles, the way you communicate. Are there any examples, Brina, that you saw when things go really bad because of lack of good communication, or where is a bad leadership style?
Examples in what sense? In sort of, have I seen them elsewhere, or have I encountered?
Through your experience, yes, you encountered in your experiences.
I mean, I mercifully have, I mean, and through a set of circumstances, really. I've sort of moved to UK and really was sort of self-employed one way or the other, or sort of was creating organizations or platforms. But yeah, I think, back to your point, I think this is the, and it kind of almost reminds me of raising children. You're always weighing, how will I react to this particular thing, and how will that impact the channel of communication going forward? And, how do I make sure that my reaction now is measured, even though maybe I would jump through the roof, because that might impede future. And this is, I think, where that balance between short and long term is sort of not kept in mind, and we allow, I think in a leadership position, you have to go through several checks. You cannot afford to say the first thing on your mind, and this is back to your point, and that's because the worst possible thing is that at times of crisis, you're not the first person who knows about problems, because at a senior position, I mean, for me, for example, at events like this, it'd be a complete disaster if the team didn't call me first when someone has an issue or they're very, very upset because they're worried about my reaction, because that's how things go wrong. And in order to have that, you have to always, I think, ultimately prioritize communication, nurturing, and doing the lessons learned when the appropriate time comes, rather than reaction that sort of, simply at a leadership position, you cannot afford reacting in that sort of way. And these are the things where normally, I think, worse things do happen when there is that breakup in communication. To connect on that.
Sure. Martin, what leadership practices help sustain team morale? I mean, just to follow up on this one.
Call it walk the talk.
Walk the talk.
But
okay.
in order to walk the talk, you first have to talk. You have to understand what is the story about. So it's an example in NLB some years ago, we were sitting together and we started creating our values. So what are the values which guiding us through our business life? And we did this bottom up. So everybody was involved in the entire group, and then we brought this together to 3 headlines. Growing people, that means developing our own people, but also helping the schools, helping the education in the country, which is in Montenegro a real topic. Encouraging entrepreneurship. One example is our Women in Business program, which maybe we will talk later, but also improving lives, so doing the good things. And these values, I think this is in total 20, this is part of my KPIs, of my personal goals. And I'm evaluated tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, I have my evaluation call, 2024. Please keep fingers crossed for me. And my bosses will ask me, Martin, what did you do here and there? And we are evaluating this. So we are asking clients, we are asking bypassers. Maybe one day you will receive a call. How is NLB seen in Montenegro? How do they act? To which level you are satisfied with this bank? And with this, we create trust. We walk the talk. And this trust is in the bank. This is a kind of a team building, but also this is creating our image outside. And that must be congruent. So we cannot make blah blah and do totally different things. This must fit together. And I believe with our values, that was a very, very important milestone for our organization.
So what are your key values?
Growing,
will be tested.
Growing people, helping
Growing
others.
people. Okay.
So we are not a selfish organization. We try to help others. We try to work together. We share information. We share knowledge. So this is a very important thing. We are good listeners. Sounds simple, but this is a very, very important step. You were saying how boards are working, and there is in this fire talk before, that sometimes boards, they don't understand that they have a problem. So this openness to touch this and to question yourself, this is a value in itself, and this is what we have to do. So we are not God, we are not the super bankers who are earning a lot of money, no. We have to work hard, and we cannot do this alone. We have to have a team around and clients who trust us, and trust is this value.
Vika, you conducted numerous board effectiveness reviews. Would you say that the boards are more focused on growing business or growing people?
I work risk-based often.
Okay.
So that means I do this work often in places where there's a higher risk, and in those places the risk is also stems from more, let's say, shareholder value focus than stakeholder value focus. So I would say much more focused on financial growth than anything else. But that's logical because I have a skewed view. I'm not the right person to answer the question.
By the way, but you probably noticed, you witnessed that they are growing people, just like NLB is doing it.
No, I think this example, Martin, what you're giving is, I was reading up on a paper today. I was talking to somebody else today about a fantastic paper out there that you can just Google, and it also has a great title. It's called Zombie Leadership: Dead Ideas About Leadership That Still Walk Among Us. And it's written by Alexander Haslam, which is one of the best social psychology professors globally, lives now in Queensland, is British, Queensland University.
There's some key lessons.
Yeah, so in that paper, there are some, these researchers talk about ideas about leadership that we still uphold, but are numerous times shown by experimental research that they're not true. And one of them is, because I was like, this is exactly what Alex is talking about, like the good example of we are not gods. So there are still ideas when it's about leadership that it's about certain traits, that it's about certain skills that nobody else has. That's why we are the leaders and are in the top seat, because we can do something that nobody else can do. But when you say we work hard, we learn, and that's also a mindset. We always want to look at our vulnerabilities, is exactly what that paper says, and also shows that leads to much better outcomes than thinking it's, leadership is something special that only I have. So I think you're like, from a psychological perspective, a fantastic example what you just gave, Martin. So thank you. It's very encouraging, I think. Trying to give you a compliment.
During your fireside talk, you were mentioning ego a lot. I mean, there is probably a lot of ego in the boardrooms, and it has to be. How to fight it?
I think it's socially learned. So I don't think, but maybe I'm naive. But I think it's that we learn that socially, like what it is to be a good leader. And that these old ideas, those zombie leadership ideas, are in there, so that maybe people act like they have a lot of ego, but do not necessarily. That's not necessarily unchangeable.
Biljana, you have led efforts to strengthen both legal accountability and responsible business conduct in this region. In moments when public attention wanes or political will is weak, what strategies help protect equality and human rights framework from being deprioritized?
It's a sort of, tough one, because you also, again, that's another argument you'll hear, is that at times of crisis, when we need to focus on growth, then all these obstacles in the view of sort of human rights and social license are getting in the way and are a barrier to foreign investment. And you will hear that train of thought, which, again, to be honest, I think it is in enlightened interest of businesses. And today we sort of spoke about social responsible businesses. If you look at projects that go wrong in the region, most often it is on issues of social license to operate. It's not necessarily because they haven't been committed to 2050 net zero. It is because they haven't gotten things right. So even if the state enforcement is weak, which is what we see in some of the countries in the world, in the region, I think it is enlightened self-interest of investors and businesses to make sure that they grow people, that they retain their workforce, that they respect labor rights, that they engage with community, because that, from the risk perspective, is the best insurance policy for their investment. And if you wanted to do maths on how much you need to invest into getting your social license and what are the risks and costs of possible delays and cancellations of projects, it actually pays off as well. It's a good business decision. So businesses then become critical. You're right, which is not to say that we shouldn't have laws that are enforced. I'm a great believer in laws that are enforced, not least because that creates a level playing field. All the businesses have to play by the same rules, and that is a good thing. But if we don't have that, then I think it's actually not wise. It's very risky to take advantage of the fact that enforcement is weak. I'd argue actually the opposite, that in these countries where there is a deficit in trust in the system still there, businesses and investors need to do more to earn that trust and maintain that trust, because population is suspicious. To begin with, suspicious because things went wrong previously, things went wrong in the past. So if anything, there is more of an onus on the business to invest and be consistent and build that trust and then maintain that trust.
When you talk about this investment, it means also investing in people.
It means investing in people
and community where they operate.
Exactly. Sort of depending on business and its externalities. First, we had panels here on migration, and in different industries, AI will have an impact. But we have an issue with workforce. So investing into people and then motivating them to stay with you is crucial, again, from sort of purely business perspective. And I'm sure that this is what eventually shows on your balance sheets as sort of success, having a very committed team that's there long term. So and I think when you sort of, we have a number of examples of successful businesses in the region, and that they're doing it instinctively. They are investing into their teams. That, and then also investing in community, depending on the type.
It probably
of the
comes
business.
also from the corporate culture they have, where they understand that it takes time to build teams, to build trust. Martin, can you tell us about corporate culture within your organization? How you build trust with your clients and obviously within your organization, with your people?
Maybe you allow an example which made me very proud. That just happened last year. I guess you all know Bled Business School in Slovenia. This is quite famous business school here in the region. And they do in the countries business case competitions. So and they started in Montenegro with the Montenegro business case competition, where all banks and big companies are participating. And we sent there a team of totally diverse, six young people, from controlling, risk management, IT, HR, 2 young gentlemen, 4 young ladies, very ambitious, and they had to make a strategy for American supermarket chain Trader Joe's. This was about how to improve their market shares. And they were working there 2 days, day and night, and they won. Wow. I was totally proud. I was meeting them, talking to them, and I have seen the spark in their eyes and their motivation. And of course, they were invited to Bled to the international competition. How to prepare the people for this. So they are already good. So I explained them, we trust you. We don't expect that you win the world, but you will give there a good example. So they went to Bled, and this is also, I think, a good example, not only about inclusion and gender, but also age, because we did not send them alone. We sent them also our most experienced, I don't want to say oldest, experienced manager to guide them. Of course, he was not allowed to help them in the business case, but he was there. And they were working 36 hours on a case about restructuring of an automotive company. And that was really hard, no sleep, nothing. And they were very good, but interesting, the colleague, Bogdan is sitting here, who was not allowed really to help them, but he was there, brought them drinks, fruits, and this famous Bled Cremeschnitter, how you say? Cremeschnitter. So this fat cake. And they won.
Because
and they
of his
won against international competition. So for me, this is a perfect example how this can work. With a very young team, you trust, you give a trust, you let them go, and you give them a kind, not the police, not the controller, but this, let's say, very human support behind, and the Cremeschnitter.
Absolutely.
So
Drinks, yes.
this is, I think, how we can translate this into reality.
So it's about building teams,
Yeah,
so to speak.
yeah.
And team
Performing teams.
And performing teams, exactly. And not relying on, and when you build those teams, you really look at performance, not at their age or gender, right?
Not at the age of gender. In this case, that was especially directed to the younger generation. And we have the next team is already waiting. So and what was very nice, the first prize, they won a budget which can be used for training and education. And they shared this with the rest of the bank. So they brought this back and shared their success, which also shows an additional value. So take care for others, growing people, so this value is working.
Vika, speaking from the perspective of cultural and behavioral risk management, and you having a doctorate, a degree in psychology, can you discuss some recent insights on inclusive leadership in social and organizational psychology?
Yeah, I can add something, but really to what Martin already has said, because maybe, I don't know if you like football.
Football.
2 days ago, a recent...
Arsenal Real.
A recent paper was published, a research amongst 200 football teams across 9 countries with over 3,000 football athletes. And I think there were 20 psychologists working on this. And it was based on social identity theory, which is one of the basic, let's say, the founding theories of social psychology. It's about social identity. So this is about, as Alex Haslam would say, usness. So what they found in this research amongst those football teams is that where leadership was able to create more shared social identity, like we, us, talk about we, this is about us doing this. And I know it's much more complex than just starting to talk about we, but it's that the leader is seen as being part of we, instead of leader and then the organization. So part of we, and also in leadership creates, appeals to that, what are we about, that created much more football success. So from a performance perspective, it is so, sometimes it's so fascinating that we in our business life, or corporate life, forget, or no, let's put it the other way around. Psychologists are very bad at bringing what we know already for decades, what works, to corporate practice. Somehow we are so bad at giving that message because
You don't want to fix it?
yeah, I don't know. It's maybe because of the word psychology. I don't know. But yeah, so that's one example. the
Ongoing
football
test?
example. Yeah.
I love your story about sports. I'm a huge sports fan. And there's a basketball story. When somebody was challenging Michael Jordan, if anybody knows that name, okay, in basketball. So when somebody challenged him, like, oh, you're not a team player. There is no I in team. And he says, yeah, but there's I in win. So, yeah, he was known as a selfish player. So, but he was winning a lot. So he has a strong argument about that being selfish. But apart from that, Bilena, you have long advocated for the integration of gender equality into core business and governance strategies. How can companies and institutions move beyond one-off initiatives to embed inclusion as a driver of a long-term resilience?
By being intentional about it. And actually, because, I mean,
And very honest.
this is sort of back to your point. I mean, if you start seeing it, or ESG for that matter, as part of your core business strategy, then you apply KPIs and metrics that you would apply to other aspects of strategy. It's sort of, things get done when they're measured. We've learned that. So therefore, and that has to be at leadership level, decision is taken that you want to be intentional about it, then design a strategy, got KPIs, and you hold yourself accountable. And for that we have a beautiful pattern. We know how to monitor our financials. So you sort of just if that is what you're. I mean, this is wider debate, and I guess I was listening to what you were saying, and perhaps it's the insurance companies that are now the loudest in saying the system of measuring results just by monitoring our profits on sort of quarterly basis is no longer fit for purpose. We do need to rethink all of that, because sort of what Martin was saying is it's fantastic, but it's NLB being intentional about it. Because at the end of the day, when we hear the annual results, they will be annual financial results of the banks. We haven't.
And our ESG report.
But yes, exactly. But it's sort of, we do need to, and we're moving gradually towards that, to see non-financial reporting as part of the audit that will have to be done. And, now let's not get into the regulations that are evolving, but, it will have to be done in the same way. Why? Because we have IFC here, who sort of, has been talking about these issues for such a long time in the region, because it is about managing risks. Ultimately, it is about managing risks. So I think you're sort of, ideally, you have a regulator who creates a level playing field, and so we shouldn't give up on that. But before that, companies can be intentional, sort of set up targets, and then hold themselves accountable. That's the only way, because one-off initiatives are just, in a way that me exercising for one day is not going to deliver any result.
Exactly.
One-off initiative is not going to deliver a real result. It's about what you keep on doing, consistency. Yeah.
And it's about moving forward and being better from day to day. I'll just ask our beautiful audience if there are any questions for our panelists. Yes, the man. Before you ask the questions, do you have kremšnita?
You're invited to play to everyone.
Thank you, thank you. Please, go ahead.
Okay, listening today afternoon, half an hour, one crazy idea, my brains wake up.
Okay. Go ahead.
For you. Crazy idea, but a question for you. It is really ESG topics, and I believe that if we have in army 60% of women generals, the wars will stop, or we have more or less wars in the future. What can we do, and how we lobbying this, that it will be UN directive that in every army we should have minimum 60% of women generals?
Wow, it's a bold idea, I have to say, yes. As you probably know, you have to go through the ranks. So they first have to be, I don't know, I think after the university they become lieutenants. So from lieutenant to captain, captain to colonel. But as overall general idea, yes. So panelists, what do you think?
Well, so long as they don't feel that they have to be more male than male generals. I mean, don't forget, there are women who started wars as well. We have one British prime minister who started wars. So it doesn't necessarily follow. It is. I think we have to come to a point where we have that complementarity, and we have that complementarity when women, either on boards or as generals, don't feel that they have to prove that they have even less empathy and that they are even more decisive and not giving up on their goal than the man. Because the real business result you get not just out of diversity but out of inclusion. And inclusion is all about being allowed to be heard and sort of authentic and bring that complementarity. So I would definitely vote for that, but let's not turn them into, make sure they're women generals.
Anybody else from the audience? Okay. So it will, at the end, final thought. Lessons from your experience. What are the key messages or for the lessons learned in this process so far? Vika, should we start with you, please? Key lessons that you learned and you want to share them with us today.
I think the key takeaway is so I don't have the perfect definition of inclusive leadership, or, if there would be one remedy for us all to be inclusive, then we probably would, if there's a little pill, we would all take it. But it unfortunately doesn't work like that. So I like what you just said about, that's the process, about wanting to get better. Mm-hmm. So I think inclusive leadership at least includes the willingness to look at those aspects of your leadership where you can improve. So to be willing to look at your own vulnerabilities, so that you can dial up the way you listen, empathy, responsiveness, which I think is needed for a good result.
Thank you. So there is no magic pill. Okay, cool. Martin.
You have to carefully listen and look around where you are, and I believe inclusion is also a mentality topic. And let's name it, Montenegro is a macho country. When I came here in 2016, I found out in the bank and also in the country, we have a lot of very educated women, but they were all hiding somehow behind the curtain in the second and third row. And before were men with a very big ego. So tall men, basketball players, with a very big ego. It was very difficult to move the ladies there around. And I think the success model was to give them space to move there. We did this model of women in business where we're not only financing women, but also educating our clients, also our people, and that was a big success. And then comes the capitalist banker who understands that this is a real business model. Women loans are half risky as man loans. And if this is not a business model, then I don't know what is the business.
Okay, so next time I go to bank, I look for a male banker. Okay. If I want my loan to be approved, look for a male banker. Okay, I got it. Biljana.
No, I think it's actually an interesting point. I mean, the other day I was, of course, for example, there is no country in the world where men live longer than women because we are less prone to any risk. I mean, we don't drive cars into trees, we don't drink. I mean, this is what doctors will tell you. It's sort of, don't
play football with buddies.
absolutely. I mean, exactly. So absolutely, you should. I think sort of and we spoke about it a bit last night at sort of with an country. I think we need to rethink a bit the definition of a leader per se. We take it for granted that leader, for example, should, never gives up. I mean, that's actually positively dangerous, never giving up. That does mean that he probably doesn't listen to those around him or her.
Exactly.
Doesn't, we should all give up at some point, if the mountain we are climbing is the wrong one. So I think that's why you do need that inclusivity, because there is that complementarity. It is true that for whatever reason, we bring on the whole more of certain qualities, men bring on the whole more of certain qualities, and it's with that complementarity that you get the best results. So I think that is, making the case for it, making the business case, which is what you were saying, is what it's about. Showing everyone that ultimately, that way, societally, we get a better result, and the company level, we get a better result.
If you allow me just to repeat, I believe it's a Japanese proverb, or actually saying, and it goes like this: progress is not when one person makes 100 steps forward. Progress is when 100 people make one step further. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You were great. Please